Why Shara Bullet is about to get fraud checked.
I'm a sniper. Snipers are hard to defend against. You can hide behind wherever you want. I just need one moment in that fight. Pull the trigger on that and catch you.
It's so tall and such a sniper, and he's really dangerous, man.
That dude is nasty.
Isn't it crazy how good he can fight with one eye?
He gotta have two eyes,
No,
Joe.
he's got one eye.
Come on.
He's blind. That's why he's fighting overseas.
Listen to me, guys. I'm the best striker this division.
Michael Venom Page vs Shara Bullet is set to go down at UFC Saudi Arabia next week. And although Shara has had an undefeated UFC career thus far and has had some impressive performances, I'm here to tell you that MVP is going to be the one to fraud check Shara. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicyMMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Ever since joining the UFC, Shara Bullet has put forward a perfect 4-0 UFC record for himself. And all 4 of his UFC wins so far have either been TKO finishes or very clear decision victories for him. As in his first fight against Bruno Silva, it was a clear win for Shara Bullet via decision. He was also able to get a TKO finish against Antonio Tricali, decision victory over Ola Jacek, also a very clear decision. And in his most recent performance and his best performance to date, he was able to beat Armen Petrosyan via a double spinning back fist, which turned out to be one of the more impressive TKOs from 2024. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, how has Shara Bullet been able to be so successful in the UFC ever since joining? Well, in my opinion, I think it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor I want to touch upon is his striking game. Because when you watch this guy strike out there, it's pretty clear that this guy has a lot of skill on the feet and is very refined out there. As on the feet, his best ability by far is his kicking game. Shara has a very unique ability to throw a lot of different kicks and throw them very effectively, as he has a traditional ability to throw leg kicks, body kicks, and head kicks, but what makes him unique is he's able to do all 3 of those things in very unique ways, as even when he's getting pressured in close alongside the cage, Shara is still able to get off some very effective kicks in order to hurt his opponents or just to keep his opponents away from him. And when Shara Bullet is in space, he's one of the more difficult guys to fight, as in space a ton of diverse and very unique kicks are going to be coming your way, and it becomes very difficult to realize and recognize what kicks are coming your way until he eventually head kicks you and hurts you, or throws kicks to the body, hurts you to the body. He obviously has a lot of different ways to hurt his opponents out there and has a lot of different ways to be successful just solely due to his kicks. But outside of his kicking game, Shara also has a decent ability to box out there. I wouldn't say his boxing is all that great for his division or in general, but I would say that Shara definitely has an ability to box out there, and he utilizes it pretty effectively off of those kicks. Because in MMA, when guys need to focus on a great aspect of a particular fighter's game, some other aspects of their game may be more effective even if they're not super effective on their lonesome. And I think a great example of this is wrestlers. There's been time in and time again where a wrestler is going up against a striker, and even though the wrestler has significantly worse striking out there, he's able to land pretty effectively on the striker. And this is due to the fact that the striker is so worried about the wrestling threat that they don't pay as much attention to some of the shots that are coming their way, and then they get caught, knocked out, or caught and hurt, and it just spirals down from there. And I think this is a very similar thing as well with Shara Bullet. Guys are so focused on his kicks that it somewhat opens up his boxing. But the next reason for why I think Shara Bullet has been able to be so effective thus far is due to the matchmaking. Because when you look at a lot of the guys that Shara Bullet has gone up against thus far, they haven't been the highest level of competition. As in his first fight, he went up against Bruno Silva, and Bruno Silva has been a guy who has had some success in the UFC, but ever since that Alex Pereira loss, it seemed like Silva was never the same. And in Bruno's fight against Shara Bullet, it became increasingly obvious that this guy was probably done at that point. As on the feet, he basically had nothing for Shara, he looked extremely slow on the feet, and although he was able to get takedowns, it still seemed like he was losing the exchanges even when he had Shara on his back. But after Shara's fight against Bruno, he then went up against Antonio Tricali, and in my opinion, Tricali is a guy who's nowhere near UFC caliber. In that matchup, he did absolutely nothing. It almost seemed like the fight was fixed. It was that bad. I'm not saying that it was, but it definitely seemed like there could have been something up. In his next fight after that, he went up against Olajaychuk, and I would say that's a decent win for Shara Bullet for sure. He definitely did put on a pretty good performance. He did his job and was able to find a very clear decision victory in the end. And in his most recent fight against Armen Petrosyan, this is certainly by far the most impressive performance of Shara Bullet's career. Armen Petrosyan is known as a guy that has a lot of kickboxing experience. He definitely has a decent ability on the feet, or a pretty good ability on the feet, and Shara was able to beat him essentially at his own game, finding a double back fist knockout on Petrosyan. But regardless, I do think that level of competition that Shara has gone up against is kind of in the lower tier of UFC caliber guys, and I think that's another reason for why Shara has been able to have a perfect 4-0 record in the UFC thus far. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I think Shara Bullet is going to get fraud checked in his next fight versus MVP when Shara has clearly had a very successful UFC tenure thus far? Well, in my opinion, it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor I want to touch upon is the level of competition. Because when you talk about MVP, it's pretty clear that this guy is going to be the best fighter that Shara has ever fought throughout his UFC career thus far, but I'm going to take it a step further. I think MVP is going to be a significantly better fighter than Shara has ever fought in his UFC career thus far. I just think it's night and day between the two. I think a lot of the guys that Shara fought in the past, when you talk about a washed Bruno Silva, a Tricali that's not really UFC level in my opinion, Olajaychuk, who didn't put on a great performance and is another guy that I don't think is a great UFC fighter, and even Armen Petrosyan, decent fighter but nothing crazy. I think it's pretty clear that Michael Venom Page is a guy that would beat all of those fighters and is a guy that I think could possibly give some issues to Shara Bullet. Now, the next reason for why I think MVP is going to fraud check Shara Bullet is due to his style. Because when you watch MVP out there, it's pretty clear that this guy is a very talented striker and is a very unique striker out there. And his style is so unique and so effective that it gives some of the best strikers in the world a very difficult time. As in his first fight in the UFC against Kevin Holland, Holland had a ton of trouble against him. Now, obviously, I'm not saying Holland is a great striker out there, but he's a guy who is a decent striker out there and has a lot of power. But MVP was able to absolutely embarrass him in every aspect of the game. And in his next fight against Ian Gary, who is actually a very good striker, MVP gave Ian so much trouble that it seemed like Ian didn't even want to attempt to strike out there with MVP, as he just took him down and was able to find a decision victory from there. But the point is, a lot of guys struggle with the striking of MVP, and I think Shara also is probably going to struggle with this very unique style. Obviously, Shara does have very good kicks out there, very unique kicks that could possibly be effective at times versus MVP, but for the most part, I think MVP knows when to blitz in and when not to blitz, and I think that overall blitzing style that MVP does possess could prove to be very difficult for Shara Bullet. Now, obviously, a lot of times the way a lot of fighters beat MVP is due to wrestling, but when you look at a guy in Shara Bullet, I don't even really think that's an option for Shara, as Shara has never shown a good ability to wrestle. He's actually shown a pretty bad ability to wrestle in some of his UFC fights, especially in his UFC debut versus Bruno Silva. Now, obviously, his UFC debut was a few years ago at this point, and he has had a lot of time to improve his wrestling, and maybe it has improved, but Shara really has never shown any improvements in terms of his wrestling, but I guess it's possible we'll see it in this matchup. But in my opinion, based upon the information that we do know, I think there is a very real possibility that if MVP wanted to, he would be able to out-wrestle Shara Bullet. Now, I don't think MVP is going to look to wrestle unless he's getting dominated on the feet, but as an example, I do think he would have better wrestling than Shara Bullet out there. But overall, I guess only time will tell what does end up happening in this matchup. I do want to mention, I do think Shara does have some redeeming qualities. I do really like his kicking game. I think he has a decent ability to box out there and strike out there, but for the most part, I do think MVP is going to be the guy to fraud check Shara Bullet. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think MVP is going to be able to beat Shara, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.